Welcome to Silver Story Lab. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Will Zamora stood in the garage at 11:47 p.m., his fingers wrapped around a black garbage bag he'd pulled from his wife's trunk. Inside were her work clothes from 3 days ago, a silk blouse and pencil skirt that reeked of motor oil, and a sickeningly sweet perfume she never wore. Beneath them, he found a receipt from Tony's Auto Repair, dated during work hours. His wife Tracy was supposed to be at Hartman and Associates, the prestigious law firm where she claimed to work 60-hour weeks. The shower was running upstairs. It had been running for 20 minutes. Will set the bag down carefully, his architect's mind already constructing the framework of something terrible. He designed buildings for 15 years, structures that required precision and patience. Now he would apply that same methodology to the structure of his marriage, which he suspected was built on lies. He went upstairs and knocked on the bathroom door. "Tracy? You okay in there?" The water stopped abruptly. "Yeah, just long day. Be out in a minute." Will walked to their bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed they'd shared for 7 years. When Tracy emerged in her robe, her auburn hair wrapped in a towel, her skin was pink from scrubbing. She did this every night now, sometimes twice. "How was work?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. "Exhausting. The Morrison case is killing me." She moved to her dresser, not meeting his eyes. "I might have to go in this weekend." Will nodded slowly. The Morrison case had closed 4 months ago. He'd checked. "I'm thinking about taking a few days off," he said. "Maybe we could go somewhere. Like we used to." Tracy's hand paused over her drawer. "This week? Will, I can't. We're slammed." "Right." He stood. "I'm going to make some tea. Want some?" "No, I'm exhausted. Going to bed." Will went downstairs to his home office and opened his laptop. He'd started a file 2 weeks ago, a simple spreadsheet tracking Tracy's movements, her behavior patterns, the discrepancies in her stories. Tomorrow, he would follow her again. But this time, he wouldn't just watch. He would document everything. Because Will Zamora didn't just design buildings. He designed solutions to complex problems. And Tracy had just become his most challenging project. The next morning, Will called in sick to his firm. At 7:30 a.m., he watched Tracy leave in her silver Honda, dressed in her usual work attire. He followed 3 cars behind in his black SUV, something he'd learned from a private investigator he'd hired briefly before deciding to save money and do this himself. Tracy didn't head toward downtown where Hartman and Associates had their offices. Instead, she drove east toward the industrial district, finally pulling into Tony's Auto Repair, a rundown garage with 3 bays and a faded sign. Will parked across the street behind a delivery truck and waited. 15 minutes later, Tracy emerged from the garage office and kissed a man in grease-stained coveralls. Not a quick peck. A deep, familiar kiss that spoke of routine intimacy. The man was muscular, tattooed, probably in his early 30s. He grabbed Tracy's waist, and she laughed, a sound Will hadn't heard from her in months. Will took photos with his phone, his hands steady despite the rage building in his chest. He watched them disappear into the office together, watched the blinds close. An hour later, Tracy left, adjusting her blouse, and drove to a nearby coffee shop where she sat with her laptop, probably establishing her alibi. Will didn't follow her. Instead, he walked into Tony's Auto Repair. The man from earlier was under a Honda Civic on a creeper. When he rolled out, Will saw his name tag, Eric Underwood. He had a cocky smile and cold eyes that sized up Will immediately. "Help you?" Eric asked, standing up and wiping his hands on a rag. "Yeah, my car's been making a weird noise. Thought I'd get it checked out." Will kept his voice friendly, observing everything. The office door was slightly open. Inside, he could see a desk covered with papers, a couch that looked too comfortable for a garage office, and several framed photos. One of Eric with his arms around a blonde woman and 2 kids. Eric was married. "Bring it in tomorrow morning," Eric said dismissively. "We're booked today." "Sure thing." Will smiled. "This is Tony's place, right?" "You Tony?" "Nah, Tony retired. I bought the place 2 years ago. It's my shop now." "Successful guy? Must be doing well." Eric's smirk widened. "Can't complain. Got everything I want." Will nodded, memorizing the man's face, his arrogance. "I'll bet you do." As he walked back to his SUV, Will pulled out his phone and searched Eric Underwood's social media. Found it immediately. Public profile, hundreds of photos. Eric Underwood, married to Lindsay Underwood, father of two, owner of Tony's Auto Repair. Pictures of family barbecues, soccer games, anniversary posts where Eric called Lindsay his rock and his forever. Will sat in his car and opened a new document on his phone. At the top, he typed, Project Demolition. He built a career on creating structures that could withstand earthquakes, storms, and time. Now he would learn to destroy one. Carefully, precisely, and completely. Over the next 2 weeks, Will became a ghost in his own life. He went to work, smiled at colleagues, took calls from clients about their dream homes. At night, he came home to Tracy's lies and her obsessive showers. But in between, he built his case. He rented a storage unit and bought surveillance equipment. Nothing illegal, just good cameras and a decent telephoto lens. He documented Eric and Tracy's meetings. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoon at the garage. Sometimes they stayed in the office. Twice, they checked into a cheap motel off Highway 9. Will also learned everything about Eric Underwood. The man had a gambling problem. Will found evidence of debts to a bookie named Victor Hopkins through some creative social media stalking and a conversation with one of Eric's employees who'd been fired and was happy to talk. Eric's business was struggling despite its appearance. The garage had 3 mechanics who complained online about late paychecks. Eric's house was mortgaged to the hilt, and his wife Lindsay had no idea how bad things were. Will also discovered that Tracy had been giving Eric money. He found bank statements she'd hidden in her car, withdrawals of $5,000, $8,000, $12,000 over the past 6 months. Money from their joint savings account, the one they'd been building for the house they wanted to design together. That's when Will's grief hardened into something cold and calculated. He drove to a dive bar on the edge of town and found Victor Hopkins exactly where Eric's fired employee said he'd be, a thick-necked man in his 50s with scarred knuckles and dead eyes. Will slid onto the stool next to him. Victor Hopkins? Victor turned slowly. Who's asking? Someone who knows Eric Underwood owes you money. Someone who can help you collect. Victor's eyes narrowed. I'm listening. Eric's been skimming from his business, hiding assets. He's also sleeping with my wife, and she's been giving him our money to pay off his debts. Badly, I might add. He still owes you what? 15 grand. 20, Victor corrected. What's your angle? I'm going to destroy him. But I need leverage. You get your money, and I get my revenge. Interested? Victor studied Will for a long moment. You don't look like the revenge type. I'm an architect, Will said. I believe in strong foundations and structural integrity. My marriage has neither. So I'm going to demolish it properly, and Eric Underwood is going down with it. Victor smiled, showing gold teeth. I like you. What's the plan? Will spent the next week orchestrating his plan with the precision he used for blueprints. He contacted Lindsay Underwood through a fake Facebook profile, posing as a concerned citizen who'd seen her husband with another woman. He included time-stamped photos of Eric and Tracy at the motel. Lindsay didn't respond immediately, but Will knew she'd received the message. He could see she'd viewed it 7 times. Meanwhile, Will befriended Owen Murray, one of Eric's mechanics who'd complained about unpaid wages. Over beers, Owen revealed that Eric had been cooking the books, claiming the garage made less than it did to avoid paying his employees properly. He also mentioned that Eric had a side business, selling stolen car parts. Nothing major, but enough to interest the authorities if someone reported it. Will recorded every conversation. He also hired a real private investigator this time. Peter Hancock, a former cop with connections. Peter dug deeper and found Eric had been running insurance fraud schemes, inflating repair costs for accident claims. Peter delivered a thick file to Will's storage unit, evidence that could put Eric away for years. You planning to blackmail this guy? Peter asked, handing over the documents. No, Will said. I'm planning to bury him. At home, Tracy had become more careless. She stopped hiding her phone, probably assuming Will was too trusting to check. One night, while she showered, again, Will scrolled through her messages with Eric. Eric, can't wait to see you tomorrow. We're that red thing I like. Tracy, only if you promise we'll have more time. I'm tired of rushing. Eric, I'll make time for you, baby. You know you're my priority. There were hundreds of messages. Plans to leave their spouses. Dreams of starting over together. Tracy promised she'd drain their accounts before filing for divorce. Eric promised he'd sell the garage and they'd move somewhere warm. Will screenshotted everything and sent it to his lawyer, Les Benson, a sharp divorce attorney who'd been recommended by a colleague. "This is airtight," Les said during their meeting. "She won't get a penny. But are you sure you want to go this route? Sometimes the best revenge is just walking away clean." "I'm not walking away," Will said. "I'm burning the bridge behind me so thoroughly that nobody else can cross it." Les raised his eyebrows but nodded. "All right, let's do this right." Will's plan came together like a complex architectural drawing. Every line connecting, every angle calculated. He started with Victor Hopkins, who confronted Eric at the garage one morning with two large friends. Will watched from across the street as Eric, panicked and cornered, promised to pay within a week. Eric couldn't pay, of course. The money Tracy had given him was already gone, gambled away or spent on the motel rooms and gifts for his mistress. So Eric did something predictable and stupid. He tried to rob one of his clients, a wealthy businessman whose Porsche was in for service. He planned to strip it for parts and sell them through his illegal connections. But Will had tipped off the police anonymously, providing them with Owen Murray's testimony about the stolen parts operation. When the cops raided Tony's auto repair, they found the Porsche half disassembled and a storage room full of stolen catalytic converters and other parts. Eric was arrested on felony theft and trafficking charges. Lindsay Underwood, who'd finally confronted her husband about the affair after receiving Will's photos, filed for divorce while Eric sat in county jail. She froze their accounts and took the kids to her mother's house. Eric's business, his only source of income, was shut down pending investigation. Victor Hopkins got his money when Lindsay sold the garage equipment to cover Eric's debts, part of a deal Will had quietly arranged through intermediaries. Victor was satisfied. One problem solved. Now for Tracy. Will came home on a Friday evening to find Tracy in the kitchen, her face pale, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw him, she ended the call quickly. "Everything okay?" Will asked, setting down his briefcase. It's Eric. He's been arrested. I saw it on the news." Will poured himself a glass of water, his expression carefully neutral. "Eric? Do we know an Eric?" Tracy's eyes widened. "No, I mean, there was this story about a garage owner. Terrible, you know? Made me think about how you never know who people really are." "That's true," Will said. "You really don't." That night, Tracy was agitated, checking her phone constantly. Will knew she was panicking, wondering if the police would connect her to Eric, if her name would come up. She'd given him money, after all, been photographed entering and leaving his business. If Eric talked, and desperate people always talked, she could be implicated as an accomplice or at least face intense scrutiny. Will waited until Sunday. Les Benson had prepared all the paperwork. The divorce filing was ready, backed by irrefutable evidence, screenshots of messages, photos of the affair, bank records showing Tracy's unauthorized withdrawals, and a statement from Peter Hancock documenting the surveillance. But Will added one more element to his plan. He invited Tracy's parents, Rudy and Debbie Vincent, over for dinner, along with his own parents and Tracy's brother Jesus. Family gathering, he'd said. Something important to discuss. Tracy thought he was going to announce a pregnancy or a new house. She dressed nicely, put on makeup, smiled nervously. When everyone was seated in the living room, drinks in hand, Will connected his laptop to the TV. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "I wanted you all here because family matters. Honesty matters. And I've discovered that my marriage has had neither." Tracy's face went white. "Will, what are you?" For the past 6 months, Tracy has been having an affair with Eric Underwood, the owner of Tony's Auto Repair. Will clicked his remote. Photos appeared on the screen, Tracy and Eric kissing, entering the motel, text messages. "She's been lying about going to work, lying about where our money went, and planning to divorce me while draining our accounts." Tracy's mother gasped. Her father stood up, face red. Jesus stared at his sister in disbelief. "Will, please," Tracy started, tears forming. "Eric Underwood is currently in jail," Will continued calmly. "Arrested for theft and trafficking stolen auto parts. The money Tracy gave him, our money, from our savings, went to pay off his gambling debts and fund his criminal enterprise. The police may want to talk to you about that, Tracy. About whether you knew what he was doing with the money." "I didn't know. I swear I didn't." "But you did know he was married. You knew he had 2 kids. You knew you were destroying his family and ours." Will turned to face her directly, his voice steady and cold. "I filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow. Given the evidence of adultery and financial deception, you won't receive alimony or any portion of our assets. My lawyer has ensured that. Tracy collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Her mother rushed to her side, but her father remained standing, looking at his daughter with disgust. I loved you, Will said quietly. I would have built you anything you wanted. Instead, you chose a cheap affair with a criminal and threw away everything we had. He turned to their families. I wanted you all to know the truth from me, not from rumors or court documents. I'm sorry this hurts, but you deserved honesty. Something Tracy couldn't provide. Will picked up his keys and walked out of his own house, leaving Tracy to face her family's judgment alone. 3 months later, Will sat in his new downtown loft, a converted warehouse he'd redesigned himself. The divorce was finalized. Tracy had moved back in with her parents, unemployed and radioactive in their social circle. Nobody wanted to hire the woman who'd humiliated her husband so publicly. Eric Underwood took a plea deal, 3 years in prison for the theft charges. Lindsay had full custody of the kids and had started dating a teacher from their church, someone stable and kind. Will had sent her an anonymous gift card for $5,000, a small kindness for another victim of Eric's selfishness. Victor Hopkins had sent Will a bottle of expensive whiskey and a note. You ever need anything, call me. Will had kept the number, but hoped he'd never need it. Owen Murray and the other mechanics had found work at a legitimate garage. Will had written them reference letters under a pseudonym. Will himself had thrown himself into his work. His firm had just landed a major contract for a downtown revitalization project. His design, his vision. The partners were talking about making him a senior partner. One evening, as Will reviewed blueprints for a new library, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Lindsay Underwood. Someone told me you were the one who exposed Eric. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, thank you. You saved me and my kids from years of lies. I hope you're doing okay. Will stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. You and your kids deserved better. I hope you find it. He set down his phone and returned to his blueprints. The library design was coming together beautifully. Strong foundation, clean lines, built to last. Just like the life he was rebuilding. Will Zamora had learned that sometimes the strongest structures were the ones you built after everything else collapsed. And he had learned that revenge, when executed with precision and patience, wasn't about destruction. It was about reconstruction, about building something better from the ruins. And Will Zamora was very, very good at building.